For decades, Queen Camilla's public image was carefully guarded. But a private diary, hidden behind locked drawers in Clarence House, has now been exposed, and its contents threaten to unravel everything. And the one who leaked it? Not the press, not an aide, but Princess Anne herself. And what Camilla wrote about Catherine will leave you speechless. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began as an innocuous request, an archival transfer, routine in nature, quiet in execution. No one expected the discovery of a diary, let alone that diary. Tucked inside a locked drawer, buried beneath years of correspondence, it was unmistakably personal, leather-bound, hand-stitched, and filled with Camilla's unmistakable handwriting. The contents? Not royal reflections or personal poetry, but sharp, emotionally charged passages that made even hardened aides stop in stunned silence. Pages laced with judgment, veiled hostility, and brutally honest assessments of the royal family's most protected figures. The authenticity of the journal was confirmed within hours, not just by handwriting analysts, but by the sheer depth of detail: names, places, dates. This wasn't gossip, it was a confession, but the true shock came not from what was written, but from how it found its way out. The leak wasn't accidental. It wasn't a breach by an opportunistic staff member or disgruntled assistant. It was surgical, deliberate, and it traced back, unmistakably, to Princess Anne. For years she had held her silence, weathering the shifting tides of royal dynamics with the same stoic composure that defined her public persona. But something had shifted. This leak wasn't careless. It was orchestrated. A quiet strike from within the firm. A move that stunned the royal court and left Camilla cornered with nowhere to hide. The palace, true to form, refused to comment, but silence only fed the storm. Whispers erupted through the corridors of Buckingham and Sandringham. Reporters camped for days outside Windsor, catching only fleeting glimpses of Camilla, pale, tight-lipped and visibly shaken. Her usually unflappable exterior was gone, replaced with something almost unrecognizable: panic. No one had seen her like this. No carefully curated statements, no attempts at damage control. Just a series of missed events, last-minute cancellations, and urgent closed-door meetings with senior advisors. And within those walls, a single question echoed with growing intensity. Why would Anne, of all people, risk everything to reveal something so deeply personal? This wasn't a petty vendetta. It wasn't about Camilla alone. It was bigger, older, calculated. Because buried in that diary were not only the echoes of a woman unraveling under pressure, but the seeds of something far more dangerous: division, legacy, and a brewing internal war that could fracture the crown from the inside out. But how did Anne get her hands on something so deeply personal, and why would she betray Camilla so publicly? She's known as the most loyal royal, the silent protector, but behind Anne's stoic expression lay years of unspoken fury. And now, with one leak, she's drawn a line in the sand, and Camilla isn't just exposed, she's cornered. This wasn't a mistake. It was a masterstroke of revenge. Anne had spent decades operating in the background, upholding duty without spectacle. But duty doesn't mean silence when the foundation begins to crack. The years following Queen Elizabeth's death had tested every bond inside the House of Windsor, yet none more than Anne's tolerance for Camilla's growing grip on influence. In the public eye, Camilla was crowned queen consort with minimal resistance. Behind the scenes, however, Anne watched the balance of power shift with discomfort, turning to quiet disdain. Post-coronation, it became clear Camilla wasn't simply occupying a ceremonial space. She was asserting dominance, often in ways Anne considered reckless. Decisions were being rerouted, protocols rewritten, and Catherine, whom Anne had long regarded as a dignified future queen, was repeatedly sidestepped or sidelined by Camilla's inner circle. The dynamic was no longer about tradition, it was about control, and Anne had seen enough. Rumours had swirled for months of terse exchanges, cold shoulders, icy silences during private receptions. But one confrontation broke the silence entirely: a closed-door altercati. On following, a royal engagement erupted into what insiders later described as the moment everything changed. Anne's tone was sharp, Camilla's retorts cutting. Staff members reportedly heard raised voices echoing down the stone corridors of the palace. No apology followed, no reconciliation attempted. Days later, the diary surfaced. Not to the press, but to a select few within the inner circle strategically. Not recklessly, Anne knew precisely what she was doing. The leak was clean, contained, and undeniable. Sealed folders left the palace with her signature on the exit logs. Not a whisper of denial followed. The signal was unmistakable. And while the palace issued no public statements, their silence was deafening. Behind closed doors, the effect was immediate. Camilla's circle panicked, demanding to know how something so personal had slipped from their grip. But it hadn't slipped. It had been chosen. Anne had broken the code of silence, not out of spite, but out of strategy. She didn't need to speak to the press. She didn't need to explain herself. She had made her point. Power plays have consequences, especially when they threaten the monarchy's future. And to Anne, that future had a name: Catherine. With that single act, Anne abandoned neutrality. She stepped into the shadows of calculated rebellion, not with noise but with precision. And what Anne revealed inside that diary wasn't just personal, it was strategic. There are words you can deny, and there are words you key and defend. But the ones Camilla wrote about Catherine, unforgivable, buried deep in her own handwriting, page after page reveals a blistering disdain for the future queen, and even darker predictions for her children. The moment Anne turned the page, the tone shifted from petty grievance to something far more venomous. What began as subtle critiques quickly spiraled into personal attacks, and then into something chillingly strategic. Camilla didn't simply express discomfort with Catherine's role, she dissected her. Line by line, she reduced the Princess of Wales to what she described as a crafted illusion, calling her dangerously perfect, a woman who had weaponized grace and made the institution look obsolete in comparison. There was no room for misinterpretation. These weren't reflections of a woman overwhelmed. They were the sharpened thoughts of someone who saw Catherine not as family, but as competition. Camilla referred to her as publicly manipulative, accusing her of building a fairy tale narrative that threatened to eclipse the very legacy Camilla had fought to claim. But the entries didn't stop with Catherine. In a move that stunned even the most jaded aides, Camilla turned her pen toward the next generation. Princess Charlotte, just a child, was described with eerie coldness, her rehearsed poise allegedly performed for cameras, a trait Camilla feared would make her dangerously likable. And Prince George? Camilla's words were darker still, describing him as having cold eyes and a premature detachment that unsettled her. No mother would take those words lightly. No grandmother would write them at all. The emotional undercurrent running through the pages was unmistakable. Jealousy wrapped in protocol, fear laced with bitterness. Camilla, even in her most confident moments, had always known her position came at a cost. But this diary revealed the weight of her insecurity, the unrelenting pressure of walking in Diana's shadow, the growing panic that Catherine would not only outshine her, but redefine the monarchy altogether. And though she wore the crown beside Charles, this diary made one thing painfully clear: she never felt safe in that seat. The response within the palace was immediate and unfiltered. Royal aides, those who had served under both Queen Elizabeth and King Charles, were reportedly staggered by the language. One described the diary as an open wound, another as a window into a battle no one wanted to believe was happening. And at the center of that battle, Camilla stood alone, exposed, unguarded, and now dangerously vulnerable to consequences that could not be contained with statements or silence. But one passage in particular left even Anne in stunned silence, and it involved a name never meant to be mentioned. In a shocking twist, Camilla's diary reveals a deeply unsettling obsession, not with Catherine alone, but with Diana. The late princess's memory still haunted Camilla's every move, and in her privat pages, she blames one woman for carrying Diana's legacy, Kate Middleton. The pages took a darker turn, no longer just commentary on the present, but a spiral into ghosts of the past. Camilla wrote Diana's name not as a relic of grief, but as a rival who still overshadowed her long after death. Her words were riddled with frustration at how the media, the monarchy, and even the public had canonized Diana, turning her into an untouchable symbol. And to Camilla, it didn't end there. That symbolism had found a new vessel, Catherine. In her mind, history wasn't just repeating itself, it was rewriting her out of it. She described it in chilling terms, claiming she was being replaced again in the public's heart, as though Diana had passed the torch of public adoration to a younger, sleeker, more dangerous contender. She called Catherine Diana's second coming in silk gloves, a phrase that now echoes through palace walls like a warning. In her most vulnerable moments, Camilla confessed to nightmares ones where the cameras zoomed past her, where the crowds chanted for someone else, where history remembered her as an inconvenient detour rather than a rightful queen. There was no diplomacy in these words, no filter, no grace, just raw, unprocessed resentment from a woman who had clawed her way into the royal spotlight only to feel eclipsed by a shadow she could never outrun. It was this emotional unraveling that pushed Anne to a point of no return. The tone in the diary had crossed a threshold. It was no longer about interpersonal politics. It was a portrait of Camilla's deep-rooted fear of irrelevance. Her passages showed no reflection, no growth, only a fixation on being outshone. And the deeper Anne read, the more she realized this wasn't just personal paranoia. It was becoming a dangerous narrative. A monarch who views legacy as a threat is one step away from undermining everything she was sworn to uphold. Camilla's grief for Diana had mutated. Instead of finding peace, she had redirected that anguish into rivalry, turning Catherine into a living symbol of everything she could never be. The diary wasn't just an admission, it was a confession of identity crisis, a woman at war with a memory and losing. It left Anne with a bitter choice: stay silent and protect a crumbling illusion, or intervene, knowing that this legacy of insecurity could corrode the future of the crown itself. But while Camilla's fear was rooted in legacy, Anne's motive was far more immediate and far more strategic. Princess Anne has never craved the crown, but she's sworn to protect it. And in her eyes, Catherine is not just the future, she's the stabilizer of the monarchy. Camilla crossed a line not just as a woman, but as a threat to the crown's survival. And Anne acted accordingly. For years, Anne watched in silence as the institution she had dedicated her life to began to warp under new hands and unfamiliar intentions. She remained loyal, even when loyalty cost her comfort. But behind that rigid exterior was a woman who had always known the difference between ceremony and survival. Anne never saw herself as heir, but she did see herself as guardian. Guardian of values, of continuity, of legacy. And within that legacy, she saw something powerful in Catherine, not a mirror of Diana, not a rival to Camilla, but a force of quiet stability. It was never about charm or headlines. It was Catherine's discipline, her restraint, her unyielding ability to carry the weight of expectation without complaint. Anne noticed, and quietly behind palace gates, she extended gestures of solidarity. The cameras never caught a nod of reassurance, an unexpected conversation, a shield against the frost of palace politics. Troubled Anne wasn't just Camilla's private insecurities. It was the growing influence of those around her. Advisors loyal not to the crown, but to Camilla's image. Decisions made without consultation. Appearances curated to eclipse rather than support. Whispers of manipulations in Charles's inner circle. Anne had seen this kind of power maneuvering before, and she knew where it led. It wasn't just unbecoming, it was dangerous. And when the diary landed in her hands, filled with contempt, bitterness, and open disdain for Catherine, Anne didn't hesitate. She saw it not as gossip, but as a warning. If this was the mindset governing the Queen consort in private, what would it become in public? Her decision to leak the diary wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate, calculated. She released it not to embarrass Camilla, but to draw a line in the sand to reassert what the monarchy was built upon: loyalty, duty, continuity. Camilla had betrayed all three, and in doing so had crossed a boundary Anne would not allow to be erased. The fallout was immediate, but the undertones were unmistakable. Anne had chosen her side. And it wasn't with Camilla. The whispers turned to murmurs inside the palace. Those who had once hovered near Camilla shifted positions, subtle but clear. A quiet divide formed behind the gilded curtains, the Windsor loyalists on one side, rallying around the old order, and the Camilla loyalists scrambling to hold ground. And in the centre, unshaken, stood Catherine, steady, silent, but no longer alone. Anne's move was more than a leak. It was an endorsement, a signal that the future queen had already earned the trust of the one royal who never gives it freely. It wasn't announced, it wasn't formal. But for those who understood how the monarchy truly operated, it was deafening. And while the diary's content shocked the world, what came next stunned even the most senior royals. For the first time since becoming queen consort, Camilla vanished. No public appearances, no official statements. And behind locked doors, sources claim she suffered a breakdown so severe, even Charles was told to keep his distance. What began as whispers of discomfort soon turned into a full-blown royal emergency. The leak hadn't just humiliated Camilla. It had destabilized her completely. The woman who had spent years cultivating resilience, who had clawed her way through decades of public contempt and scandal, suddenly crumbled under the weight of her own words. The walls of Sandringham became a fortress of silence. Inside, emergency meetings were convened without fanfare. Only a select circle of advisors and physicians were granted access. The objective was not recovery, it was containment. No cameras, no aides without clearance. Just damage control behind velvet doors. King Charles found himself in a crisis that blurred the line between husband and monarch. Privately, he was torn. The woman he had defended for decades at great personal and political cost was now too fragile to stand beside him. But publicly, he could not afford to waver. Every appearance, every speech, every handshake had to continue as if nothing had cracked beneath the crown. Yet behind his forced composure, reports suggest he was rattled. His once impervious queen consort was refusing to leave her rooms. Cancelled engagements began to pile up, first quietly, then conspicuously. Staff cited scheduling conflicts. But insiders knew the truth. Camilla could barely function, let alone perform. What came next only fueled the storm. Unverified but persistent rumors claimed Camilla had suffered fainting spells. Others whispered of paranoia, questions repeated to aides, suspicions that others were watching her, listening in. Every knock-on her door became a potential betrayal. Royal doctors were summoned under strict confidentiality agreements, their assessments guarded like state secrets. The diagnosis? Officially nothing was confirmed, but emotionally it was clear Camilla was unraveling. The fear wasn't just about what had been leaked, it was about what hadn't yet. If Anne had chosen to reveal one diary, what else might she be holding back? Camilla's entire past had suddenly become a ticking clock. Every moment alone became a calculation, every silence from Anne a warning. She had lost control not only of the narrative, but of the very institution she once hoped to shape. And perhaps most terrifyingly of all, she had no idea how much more was coming. But while Camilla struggled to recover, the public reaction to the diary only deepened the palace crisis. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. As headlines screamed of betrayal and venomous pages, Catherine, Princess of Wales, appeared in public with calm elegance, sending a message more powerful than any royal decree. While the monarchy trembled behind gilded walls and Camilla vanished into silence, Catherine stepped forward. Not with a statement, not with an interview, but with presence. A simple appearance at a children's charity event, scheduled long before the scandal, suddenly became a global focal point. Cameras zoomed in not to analyze her wardrobe, but to read her expression. What they found was unshaken grace. No visible reaction, no deviati. On from duty. In a moment when the institution could have fractured under the weight of personal vendetta, Catherine chose service, and the world noticed. Social media erupted. Hashtags like #TeamKate and #QueenInWaiting surged within hours. Commentators who once questioned her quiet demeanor now praised her as the monarchy's steady anchor. Articles reframed her silence, not as passivity, but as power. The comparison to Camilla became unavoidable. While one vanished into secrecy and speculation, the other faced chaos with composure. For many, the contrast was more than symbolic, it was prophetic, a reflection of the queen she is becoming, not just the title she may one day hold. Inside the palace, allegiances were shifting. Camilla's defenders fell silent. The advisors who once navigated around Catherine now leaned in. Meanwhile, Anne's allies, previously quiet, began surfacing more publicly, attending events alongside Catherine, nodding to her presence with a subtle frequency that did not go unnoticed. It was a choreography of quiet endorsement, an unofficial repositioning of royal alignment, and the British public, long known for reading between the lines, read everything clearly. The emotional wave was not limited to admiration. There was pain, too deep generational pain resurfacing from the wounds of Diana's past. Old clips of Diana circulated once more, now intercut with images of Catherine, framed as a continuation of poise under pressure. People remembered the Brabant silencing, the scandals, the coldness behind palace doors, and in Catherine they saw a rewriting of history, a second chance, a different ending. Yet Catherine remained unmoved. No retaliation, no response, only duty. And in that silence, she carved a place not just in the monarchy, but in the hearts of those who had once doubted her. Her triumph wasn't loud, it wasn't calculated, it was earned. Through restraint, through resilience, through refusal to stoop to the chaos that had surrounded her. But just as the monarchy began to stabilize around Catherine, a final devastating twist would threaten to reopen everything. Just when the palace began to recover, an anonymous royal insider dropped a bombshell. There was another diary. One Camilla wrote years before her marriage to Charles, and in it were references to Diana, Charles, and even a shocking remark about William as a child. The revelation hit like a second wave, washing away any illusion that the worst had passed. The first diary had been catastrophic, but it was written in recent years under the weight of modern responsibilities and political tensions. This second one? It came from a time when Camilla was still publicly silent, yet privately seething, a period that revealed not just her grievances but her blueprint. The insider who leaked the existence of this diary wasn't a fringe figure. Their access was credible, their information precise. They claimed the volume was stored in a private collection of personal effects, long thought irrelevant until now. The tone, they said, was colder, sharper, less emotional, more deliberate. The writing matched Camilla's hand, but this time it dripped with strategic bitterness. In one passage, she reportedly referred to Diana as the unshakable ghost, lamenting that no matter how the press turned, Diana's presence hovered over everything from Charles's public image to the loyalty of the nation. But perhaps more disturbingly, the diary offered early insight into Camilla's perception of William, not as the beloved heir, but as an unpredictable wildcard. She reportedly feared that his popularity, even in childhood, could one day eclipse the monarchy's ability to control its own narrative. There was a passage unconfirmed, but widely whispered, in which she speculated that if William ever turns cold, the crown won't know how to warm itself. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just bitterness toward Diana or resentment toward Catherine. This was a deeper, older anxiety that the future of the monarchy could slip out of Camilla's grasp before she ever had the chance to hold it. And if the first diary showed the fracture, the second showed the origin of the crack. Behind palace walls, the royal household went into containment mode once again. Officials scrambled to track the documents' whereabouts. Legal teams were activated. Quiet calls were made to the press, invoking decades-old non-disclosure arrangements. This wasn't damage control. It was a last stand. Because if this second diary emerged publicly, it could trigger something far more dangerous than scandal. It could undermine Camilla's legitimacy altogether. Her ability to attend engagements, to sit beside the king, to represent the monarchy on the world stage. The crown doesn't forget, but it cannot afford to relive. And a second, more damning volume might leave no room for redemption. Inside the firm, paranoia bloomed once again. If Anne had leaked the first diary, had she seen this one too? If so, was she waiting, watching, calculating the moment to bring it forward? Or worse, was someone else pulling strings now, using the diary as leverage in a war the public still hadn't fully seen. And now, with the monarchy teetering on a second wave of scandal, one woman stands in quiet control of the narrative. She never wore a crown. She never needed to. In the shadows of scandal, betrayal, and royal chaos, Princess Anne emerged not just as the enforcer, but as the keeper of legacy. And with one leak, she redefined who holds true power in the House of Windsor. For decades, Anne walked the line between duty and detachment. She wasn't the heir, nor did she want to be. She never competed for headlines or courted popularity. Her strength lay in what she didn't say and what she never needed to prove. But when the institution she spent her life defending began to teeter under the weight of Camilla's missteps and Charles's conflicted leadership, Anne didn't hesitate. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't call a meeting. She simply released the truth. One diary, one act, and the entire balance of royal power shifted. What followed wasn't outrage from Anne's peers, it was reverence. The press, usually hungry for scandal, instead began referring to her as the last true Windsor, not out of nostalgia, but out of recognition. In an era where image has become currency, Anne remained the embodiment of something older, firmer, and far less fragile: integrity. Camilla, once elevated to queen consort through calculated resilience, saw her influence collapse in the space of days. Her absence from public life, her unraveling behind closed doors, and the whispers of a second, darker diary turned allies into silence. And in that silence, Catherine rose. Catherine's path, once quietly supported by Anne, now seemed unmistakably cleared. She didn't claim victory. She didn't shift her tone. But the difference was visible in how the public now viewed her, not just as the Princess of Wales, but as the monarchy's most stabilizing figure. Charles, though still king, appeared increasingly insulated by Catherine's presence, his missteps softened by her grace, his tensions with Camilla shadowed by her disappearance. And though no one said it aloud, there was a new understanding within the firm. The future no longer relied on charisma or coronets. It depended on trust. And trust had migrated firmly, undeniably, toward Catherine. But at the center of it all stood Anne, unmoving, unshaken, watching. Some now say she is the monarchy's true guardian, not in title, but in action, that behind every major transition to come, Anne will be the unseen hand, the final voice, the one who knows where the institution bends and where it must never break. The irony is staggering. Camilla's diary was meant to damage reputations, to quietly undermine. Instead, it crowned Anne with something far more lasting than a title: the acknowledgement that she was always the queen the institution needed, even if history never named her as such. As the world watches the dust settle, one truth remains: diaries may be private, but in the House of Windsor, nothing stays hidden forever. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.